skipping ahead. I'm here to learn how to eat better and healthier. I'm Elena Phillips, and I'm continuing from form, and I want to learn easy recipes with.
Hi, I'm Katie.
And we're here to learn about eating healthy.
Yep, and try and figure out the best things to eat to make it so that we're going to live long lives.
One, two, check, check, check. 1, 2, check.
I'm Marybeth. I'm from Victor, and I'm here with a teacher, Beth, Rita, and just here to support the Good Life Challenge. We both tried it before, and we're wanting to learn more and continue it and pass on the challenge.
And I'm here because I did the challenge last year, and I pretty much stayed the course and dropped 20 pounds, and I feel great. So I want to continue, and it's great to meet people.
Hi, I'm Deb Pecoraro. I'm from Wayne Central High School, and the reason I came tonight is because I started a diet in June, and I just wanted to get some ideas of what a plant-based diet would look like so I could further my weight loss and be healthier. That's it.
And I'm Michelle Gabriel. I'm also from Wayne Central High School. I did the plant-based challenge last year for 10 days, and I loved it. I kind of fell off the wagon, and I want to get back on it.
So, my name is Rick Amundsen. I know a lot of people in the audience, but for the people that I don't know, I am a retired educator, and I've been a health and wellness consultant since I retired being the superintendent of schools in Lyons after 35 years in public education. And my retirement job, which I love, is being a health and wellness consultant for Smola Consulting. And I'm happy to welcome you here tonight. A bunch of like-minded people in a room for something that's very, very positive, and that's the Good Life Challenge, which you can see behind me, if you're well aware, is going to run from January 7th through the 16th in the new year. You're definitely part of a pretty well-oiled machine and a really positive initiative. Last year, as many of you are aware, some of you are not, and I'll explain who the we happens to be here in a minute. We did this challenge with 36 area school districts, and thinking that we might get a couple hundred people participate in the challenge, and we ended up with 1,315 people. Right now, just so you know what you're a part of a group that is participating in this, that right now is pushing 2,700 people. 2,700 people. And I've heard a couple of comments, and I had the same observation, that it's kind of neat to see some guys in the crowd. So guys, way to go. Way to go, guys. I've also ran into a couple people that are here, the guys, because I think someone made them come. That's not half bad either. That's not half bad either. So anyway, hopefully this evening is going to be informative for you, and maybe a night to remember and give us a good kickoff for what we're going to embark on. So a little bit about just a few words, and I'm going to turn it over to our host tonight. I work for a company called Smola Consulting. Smola Consulting is actually the sponsor of this, and even though there's a lot of school people in the crowd here, we do have people from all our other clients. One of our main clients, sitting right here, is Ontario County. There's a lot of Ontario County employees here. Yay, Ontario County. Yeah. Lots of participation in Ontario County. So we have offered this to our clients, quite honestly, because we believe that this can have one of the most positive health effects for you personally, and your organization collectively. And I have to tell you that I was listening today to some of the speeches about our president who's passed, and all the nice things they're saying, and it got me thinking, about the goodness that's in the room right now. This is a kind of initiative that, in my opinion, is really good for you, but it also can be good for far more people than you. So you are leading the way in something that's, in my opinion, sorely needed in our country right now, and that's an emphasis on health. And there's lots of reasons for that. One of them is your own personal health, your family's health, the collective health of our country, and it has lots of economic implications as well. Just a couple of thank yous. Finger Lakes Community College, Patty Zimmer and Ainsley Sikora, and the whole staff here, thank you so much for donating this room to us, and all the audio-visual, thank you. You would not be here tonight unless somebody in your school or company was a contact person for us. We have wellness coordinators, we have wellness committee members in here, we have human resources representatives, people that are out there leading the way in your organization, advertising this, trying to do good things for you. So thank you to all those people. I'm going to be turning it over to our hosts tonight, Doug and Sherry Schmidt. They're really the brains behind this whole thing, and that will be the main part of the program. And of course, we have several speakers tonight, and I want to thank them as well. Let's give you a chance to read this real quick. I ran across this last week in my travels, reading some of the things that I read, and it made me think of this. And it's something that I think is, well, it's something that I'm focused on right now. I have to admit to you, when Doug Schmidt came to me a couple years ago and told me that we should start focusing on something like this, I was a little concerned. I thought maybe, even though I knew there was lots of good stuff out there, I was worried about pushback. I thought that we live in a farming region. We live in a region where there's dairy farmers and there's people that rely on meat to make a living and things like that. And I worried a little bit about pushback that we might receive and how hard we should actually push this. I have to tell you, I have been absolutely, totally surprised and flabbergasted that has not happened one iota. Not one iota. Okay? We're not against anybody. We're for something, and we're really trying to promote something right here that's good for the collective health. And the skepticism that I had was not fueled by science. It was fueled by possibly public opinion, wondering how this would be received. Because of people like you, it's been received so fantastically, and it's starting to gain a hold. Now, maybe I'm nuts because I'm aware of this and looking at it, but it just seems to be gaining all sorts of momentum. As you embark upon this challenge with us this year, hopefully you're going to find ways to incorporate some of Doug and Sherry's techniques in your own personal lives, and it's going to make you and your family better and healthier. So I'm gonna turn this over now to Doug Schmidt and let him take the program away. I really appreciate you coming. Enjoy the program. And Doug Youngstown of the Victor School District.
Evening. I have to get used to the mic just a second so I don't talk too loud. Can you hear me way in the back? Terrific. I have a question for everybody. How many here are already plant-based? I have to get sort of a gauge on my audience. How many are plant-leading? You have a couple meals a week, not fully on board yet. How many are plant-curious? And how many don't even know what I'm talking about? You were dragged here this evening, and you're going to listen to something. Oh, that's pretty good. Yes, this started many years ago for us, and I have to figure out this. There we go. My wife, Sherry, she's over there in the kale shirt, waving. Hi, Sherry. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. And this is a journey we made together in this. And we're going to be the people that will be guiding you. If you've signed up for the challenge, and if you haven't already, you can sign up over here at our Ask a Coach table. We're going to be guiding you through the 10 days and actually a couple weeks before, giving you the information you need to be successful in answering any questions, whether about the challenge itself or where does this come from. As Rick said, we're over 2,700. He didn't tell me the new number, so 2,700. Woo! Last year we had 1,300, so we doubled it this year. And we have people from all across the state, from as far away as Buffalo, Albany, Adirondacks, even down in New York City, are doing the challenge with us. As I begin to talk and you listen to our speakers, I want you to think about, why are you here? What brought you to this moment? What brought you to this point in life? We all have those moments. Some of you, it might just be, I'm trying something again to get the health I wanted. Others, gee, I heard this really can help a chronic disease I'm battling with. Somebody else, just willing to try a challenge. But think about that and keep that in the back of your head, because some of the speakers tonight, you may resonate with. And you may say, that's me. That was me before they made their changes. I haven't always been as thin as I am. I was the typical 40-something-year-old guy who gained a few pounds as he watched his high school kids age. Every year, unbuckling the notch in the belt a few more, adding a few more pounds, not getting on the scale as often. And then 10 years ago, at age 49, I had a heart attack. I had it in my lower anterior descending artery, which is often called the widowmaker, because 90% of the people who have a heart attack there don't make it. I was one of the lucky 10%. And after that time, I started, oh, must not like that picture. Well, luckily this picture's there. It took us a little while, it took us 8 years, but I made the transition. I had a cardiologist who said I'd be on medication the rest of my life. Those medications, I thought, I'm a guy in my late 40s, early 50s. What do these medication side effects have to do long term? I expected this for somebody in their 70s, 80s, not somebody in their 40s, 50s. And so I did research, and I found a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And he said, just by changing what I ate, I could get off all my medications. He said, just by changing what I ate, I could lose weight, be healthy, never have to worry about another heart attack ever again. My cardiologist didn't say that. Didn't find that anywhere else. And I was wondering if this was true. So it began our journey. And right now, I turned 60 in October. Last year, at just before turning 59, I ran my first full marathon and 2 half marathons. That's pretty good for a guy who never ran a mile in his life. We inherit more than genetics from our parents. We also inherit our diet. This is my parents. I always knew them this heavy. They battled with their weight up and down. They had to work to their dying day, literally their dying days in their 80s. Because when they retired, my dad retired from Kodak with a great pension. He was one of the first retirees in the area. He had a great pension, great health care, except he didn't take into account chronic disease that he and my mother battled for the rest of their lives. They had to continually work because their health care did not provide coverage for the prescription drugs, which ran $300 a month for both of them. So they continued working until they died, until that chronic disease took them. But I came across a picture of them when they were younger, and they weren't heavy people. So was that genetics, or was it the food that they ate? Our tastes, our preferences, our food, it literally starts in the womb with what our mothers ate. Nothing in our life is so prevalent as is food that we eat every single day. And we have an industry that supports what we eat. The industry, the food industry, knows that we like three things: salt, fat, and sugar. So what do? They give us salt, fat, and sugar. And they give us more because we want more. And they sell it to us because we buy it. On top of that, we have a pharmaceutical corporation that says, we can fix whatever you have. Here's a nice pill. Thing is, so many of us settle for the quick fix. And that quick fix is not real, because these pills do not fix the conditions, especially with chronic disease. All they do is manage the symptoms. There is no magic pill. There is nothing that's going to fix you. I came across this quote: pills don't cure disease, they just manage the symptoms. If I didn't change what I ate, all the pills, the statin drugs, everything else, would have just continued until my chronic disease got worse. They put me on other medications, and it was just a slow decline to the end. We are living longer, but we're living sicker than ever before. Good news, your cholesterol has stayed the same, but the research findings have changed. And that's actually true. Just a couple weeks ago, the American Cardiology Association just put out new guidelines on how to treat people with coronary artery disease. And they really changed things up a lot. So it has. And one little caveat here, and I use this, that number getting under 200 is sort of an arbitrary number for your total cholesterol. 35% of all heart attacks happen between the range of 160 and 200, based on the Framingham Heart Study, the longest running heart study in the nation, done in Framingham, Mass, of people living around Framingham, Massachusetts. I think it's been going on 60 years or so. So if you just say, oh, my doctor says, you know, I got it under 200, I'm a good, not necessarily. Based on the Framingham Heart Study, you need to get your total cholesterol down under 150. If you get it down under 150, you're basically heart attack proof. Now we have also people taking limited research, taking it, tweaking a little bit, and giving us diets. And is this just another diet of the week, you might ask, this whole food plant-based diet? Well, whole food plant-based diet has been around decades. It is the most researched diet yet, and it has been proven itself over a lot of these others. All these will help you lose weight, but they won't help you cure chronic disease. Then we have something like this where, you know, eat what makes you happy. After my heart attack, and when my parents did pass, I was at an event with my brothers, and we went out to eat, and they took me to a burger joint. And I said, I can't. If there's a vegan burger or a veggie burger, I can eat that, but I can't eat meat. And my brother said, come on, Doug, you're on statins now. You can eat whatever you want. Not true. Then there's moderation, that whole thing. Oh, everything in moderation. You know, are 2 cookies a day moderation? Is it 2 cookies a week? Is it 2 cookies a month? And who determines that moderation? You would never ask an alcoholic to drink in moderation. But all of us, most of us, are addicted to the food we eat. And the thing is, food is everywhere. You know, the alcoholic can avoid the liquor store. The alcoholic can avoid the bar. We can't avoid food. It's everywhere. It's in the workplace. It's when we go out to family functions. It's at restaurants. It's very hard. Moderation doesn't work. And I don't mean to sound so down on all this, that it's all negative. It will get positive. I'm not wearing black just heart disease is the leading killer of all Americans. It is the leading killer of women, and it didn't used to be, but it is now, along with men. It also, and this boggled my mind, heart disease kills more women than all cancers combined. 1 in 3 of us are diagnosed with cardiovascular disease. 1 in 3 of us will die of cardiovascular disease. But it's not just cardiovascular disease. All the chronic diseases are increasing at a steady rate with no sign of decline. And the scary thing, it's not just adults that have to worry. Children are being diagnosed with cases of type 2 diabetes, not juvenile diabetes, type 2 diabetes at younger and younger ages. And they're saying right now 1 in 5 children in America are overweight or obese. A little caveat, when I was growing up, I was the husky kid. I was the one they picked for tug of war to be the anchor on the rope. I was the exception back when I was growing up in the 60s. Now, when I look on the bus loop, I'm a teacher in Victor, now when I look on the bus loop, I wouldn't be the exception anymore. And that's scary. They have found the beginnings of cardiovascular disease in children that they've autopsied as young as age 10, fatty deposits in the arteries of these children. So here, if you eat the standard American diet, most likely you will have or do have cardiovascular disease. It just hasn't been diagnosed yet, or you'll be diagnosed with some other chronic disease or inflammatory disease. We can safely say 50% of the people we work with will have a chronic disease in their time working. So many of us are like this. I try to eat healthy. I never sprinkle salt on ice cream. I only eat the caffeinated pizza. My beer is 100% fat-free. We justify our eating habits. Even myself, which I've changed what I've eaten drastically. To give you an idea, before I was a teacher, I used to be bakery trainer for Wegmans. I can bake anything from croissants, Danish, cookies, cakes, wedding cakes, anything. I have a very bad sweet tooth. I've had to change all that. And even now, I justified as I went through this progress, well, I've given up so much. Well, what I gained was my health, and I can't let go of that. So some of you were probably asked on the way in, what does the good life mean to you? You know, for some people, it might be being with the grandchildren. Others, it might be exercise, working out, getting that athletic high from running. Okay. I don't want to show. Oh, there we go. Okay. Some of you might want to garden or do some hobby that fulfills and de-stresses you. But all these things, or even travel the world, but all these things require good health. And if you don't have your health, it's going to be hard for you to realize those things that give you that good life. So you have a choice here. You can either you can make a change, or you can leave things to chance. You can hope that you don't inherit the diseases your parents inherited. You can hope you don't come down with chronic diseases, or you can make these changes in your health and what you eat and take control of your own health. Bad habits. They're so ingrained in us that they're hard to overcome, but you can change those habits. We don't think about the food we eat. You know, we're go, 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 rush, rush, rush. With this, you have to plan, because if you're hungry, you have to have something. And so often we don't even think about the choices we make. We're out, we're about, we're hungry, we got to get something quick, and you get whatever's available. But food is a life force. It can either heal you from within, or it can harm you. With every bite you take, that's the decision you make. And what this diet will do, this way of eating will do, it is full of the vitamins and minerals your body needs to heal you, but also feed your immune system. This is Dr. Kim Williams. He's a cardiologist. He was president of the American Cardiology Association. He says, I don't mind dying, I just don't want it to be my fault. He had some medical issues. He found the whole food plant-based diet. He fixed his medical issues. He brought it to his colleagues in the Cardiology Association, and he quipped one time, he sort of joked that there's two kinds of cardiologists. Those that have read the research and have gone plant-based, and those that haven't done the research. So it's time for a change. Change is hard. We've all probably tried things before. I've tried Weight Watchers. I tried other things. None of them work. My wife Sherry has tried a lot of them, and it didn't work. It was that yo-yo dieting. We're here to help you make those changes and commit to those changes. So why a whole food plant-based diet? I could talk for hours on this, and we already talked that there's many diets out there that will help you lose weight. But this is the only diet. It's the most researched one. The largest medical insurer in the country, Kaiser Permanente, recommends it to their patients. It's the only diet shown to improve, reverse chronic diseases such as heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, IBS, lupus, some form of cancers, mainly colon, breast, and prostate cancer. And the bottom line, it is the only diet shown to prevent and reverse heart disease. The leading killer of all Americans. You can reverse it. We've met people, Sherry and I, we've met people who had clogged arteries, and they're totally clear. We met a lady who was in her late 70s who had strokes. Her carotid arteries were all blocked. She went plant-based, and she's living a fine life now, no issues. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, he works at the Cleveland Clinic. One of his colleagues was diagnosed with coronary artery disease, and this is his lower anterior descending artery on the left. And that's what he went into the hospital for. You see it's all crimped there. It looks, you know, very small and shrunken down. He switched to a whole food plant-based diet. 3 years later, looks like he never had coronary artery disease. That's how powerful nutrition is. That's what makes me able to stand up here and not have to worry about another heart attack. I could talk for hours about, you know, the standard American diet, whole food plant-based diet. I could talk to you about the blue zones. I don't know if you know about the blue zones, but there's 5 blue zones in the world as found out by Dan Buettner and a crew from National Geographic. These are places in the world that people typically live into their 90s, many into their over 100, and they have lots of things in common with these 5 areas. And one of them is that they have a plant slant. They may eat meat, but they only have it 2-3 times a month, chopped in a stew or a soup or in a stir fry. They're not having it every single day like we do. And if it wasn't enough, Elizabeth Blackburn, she was a research scientist. She was the one who found out about telomeres, and telomeres are on the end of our DNA, and it tells how long we're going to live or how old we are, type of thing. And she found in her research that those eating a whole food plant-based diet for 3 months caused 500 genes to change, turning on genes that prevent disease, turning off genes that cause disease, such as cancer, heart disease, and other chronic diseases. It's powerful. At any given moment, you have the power to say, this is not how the story ends. When you talk about the good life that you imagine, when you talk about what you want to do, it's not written in stone. It's not written in your genetics. They have found that genetics only plays 20%, even if you have those genes, 20% into the outcome. 80% is based on lifestyle choices and environmental conditions, toxins, etc. 80%. And if you go whole food plant-based, you can beat your genetics. I have a couple people that I brought in tonight that I want to share their story. I'm not going to tell their story. I've asked them to share their story with me. And it's powerful. When a couple years ago, a new teacher came to our building, and she had so much vitality and bubbly and effervescent, and little did I know what she had gone through. And she shared her story with me, and I'd like her to share it with you. So if I could have Jen Hall come up. Right.
Hi. I'm happy to be here talking tonight. Yeah, I started, can you hear me? No? Okay, hold on. I need to get closer. Oh boy. I've never actually done this before where I've used a microphone, so if I'm a little nervous and I ramble on, I'm sorry. I'm known for talking a lot. I won't talk for long though. My whole life, it's been a battle trying to get myself healthy. I was the kid who was on a diet. My mom put me on a diet when I was 9 years old. She was feeding me Entenmann's fat-free desserts because that was the key, the fat-free, not knowing all the processed stuff that I was eating. She had me power walking the neighborhood every night with little weights, and just, I kind of say that because I was born like that and I went through that, it was a curse, but it was also a blessing, because I had to go through trial and error to figure out how to become a healthier me. I've tried a lot of the things that Sherry's tried. I've tried Weight Watchers, I've tried LA Fitness, all different things. But slowly, it's a process. So little baby steps is how I did it. My heaviest, kind of what really scared me, my dad was 38 and he had a heart attack. He's okay. At 48, he had open heart surgery. He's 64 now, and he's had another surgery, and I keep trying and trying to help him, but when he had that first heart attack, it really knocked some sense into me. At the time, I was 235 pounds, and I remember another thing that happened. I went to a carnival, and I couldn't fit in the seat to ride the ride. And so that kind of smacked some sense into me, that I had to really do some change and get it right this time. So that was about, I don't know, 8 years ago, when I was at my heaviest. And really, I've slowly shifted over to a plant-based diet, and it took me baby steps. And one of the reasons I do it is for my children. Once I had kids of my own, it gave me a goal. It gave me something that I knew I had to work towards. So I think kind of finding a support network was really important for me, finding other people that shared my beliefs and shared, the goals that I had. Having someone to kind of do those things with me. I get up, I'm very active too. That was a huge part of it, just being active. Yeah, they're the ones that kind of forced me to do the change. And the one thing that I can say is that, I heard it on the radio the other day. The lady was talking about, she's talking about habits. It's a habit to put a ton of creamer in your coffee every morning. But then, if you go without it for a little while, it eventually becomes a habit to not have it. And then when you try that coffee, it's fine black. I mean, that's kind of just a simple example of it. But it becomes the habit to be the healthier habit. So slowly picking, even if you do this challenge and you pick one thing to make it a new habit. It's something you've done for yourself. So, that's it. I didn't talk too long, right?
Now that,
just use this. Our next speaker, we've been doing challenges in our district, Victor, for the past, this is number 4. And in our very first one, right, Marybeth? First one? Second. Marybeth came and took the challenge and did it whole, not whole hog, whole plant, whole food. Little did I know what she was dealing with. She's a nurse in our junior high. And you know, I always love it when I can bring in people from the medical community that change their life, because then it becomes more real to everybody else when they say, oh, it must be real, you know, this person in the medical field does it, this person. So if you could, give a nice warm round of applause for Marybeth.
That I worked out this morning, I could get rid of that stuff. My name's Marybeth, and I'm the school nurse in Victor in the junior high. And also I've been on the health and wellness committee at school for about 7 or 8 years. And I remember the day that Doug came to our meeting and introduced this program to us. And he was met with a lot of, where's the protein, where's the iron, because they're nutritionists, nurse practitioner, athletic directors. At that time, that was our group. And we've come so far since then. It's just snowballed in Victor and obviously every place else. But it's been amazing. We're very grateful. And now Doug's in charge of our health and wellness committee, which is awesome for us. So thank you for that. I started, let's see, I'm so sorry because I am not a public speaker, but in March of 2017, this is my before picture, and I'm pretty happy, smiling, and my 3-year-old granddaughter's next to me, and we're looking for crabs in the ocean. And I was, at that point, I was just kind of accepting, this is me, I'm happy, I have, you know, my family. You know, we eat out a lot, it's empty nest. I can live with this, I'm on blood pressure medicine, but everything else, you know, I can do this. I'll accept it. So then I, you know, I had had all the knowledge, or some of it, about the plant-based diet, but I went for my annual appointment because I was being followed for my ADD medicine and my blood pressure medicine. And my cholesterol came back. It was normally a little high, but I always had good, good cholesterol, so they always said that balanced it out. Well, this time, my cholesterol was 277. So they were about to put me on a new medicine, and I was shocked. My mother had her first heart attack in her 60s. My grandmother passed away in her 60s from her first heart attack. So here's my granddaughters, and I'm not going to be that mother that all my kids have to come and take care of me and all of that. So I went to the plant-based kickoff for it was in March of 17, and they told us to watch the Forks Over Knives. So even before it began, I watched that, and I was just so sold on it. And I went on YouTube and looked at all of the things on YouTube, and anything I could find regarding this, I just devoured it. And I didn't even wait for that to start. I just went right into it. So 6 months later, I lost 45 pounds. My cholesterol dropped over 100 points. I had more energy and focus at work. I was off my blood pressure medicine, and I didn't need my Adderall anymore, which I can't tell you. If I forgot it in the morning, I would go back home and get it. That's how unfocused I was feeling at the time. So it just made such a difference in my life and my energy level. And now I work out, and I've jogged, and I've done 5K, which that's as far as I'll ever go. And I'll be 60 in August. So, and I just feel so much younger than I did back then. And again, I was the one doing all the yo-yo dieting, trying to maintain, and I just could never stay at one place. And this is the longest I've ever done anything. And it feels good, and I don't ever feel like I'll ever go back. I don't crave anything anymore. It took time, it wasn't easy, but it was so worth it. And now I just feel so good that I'm just so very grateful for that.
Well, our next speaker came just a tad late. We have to get his PowerPoint onto this computer. The good news is Kitchen Verde, Sarah Goodenough, if you know her story, it's a wonderful story, but one of our favorite places to get food. Sarah, wave hi. she has her own story. I should have pulled her up here, but we only have so much time. She brought in some samples of the food she makes. She has a plant-based food service. So if you don't want to cook, you don't like to cook, you can get stuff for her, and it is compliant for the challenge. So we're going to take a short 10, 12-minute break. Go over there, see Sarah, get her stuff. We'll get all set up, and we'll meet you back here. Gives you I do want to be cognizant of your time and everybody's time. So we're going to start to continue. If you're waiting to get things from Sarah, that's great. But if we can just keep the noise down a little bit so our next presenter can present. We're all set up and ready to go. And we have a goal of getting out of here about 8-ish. So we'll do that. Our next guest, Tim Kaufman and his wife Heather. Sherry and I met 3 years ago at a place called Plant Stock. It's a weekend event where all the plant-based docs come in and you learn the latest and greatest in plant-based nutrition. Tim and I found out we had so much in common, besides just plant-based nutrition. And it was his influence that got me to run the half marathon and the full marathon. I figured this guy with everything he's gone through can do what he does. Why am I just sitting on the couch? So, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend and teacher, Tim Kaufman.
Thank you. I'm a little freaked out at this mini stage here. I'm probably going to fall, so it'll be super entertaining. But thank you guys for having me. Doug, Sherry, they are amazing people, and their heart really wants to get people healthy, and that's super cool. So again, thank you for having us. You guys are pretty courageous because 3 teachers up on stage, like, you might be here a long time. But actually, I'm going to start my watch. My throat's a little dry. I've been yelling at kids all day because I'm a teacher in Williamsville. It's about 1 hour and 15-ish minutes from here, 1.5 hours. So I'm going to walk you through my story really fast. I'm going to try to get through it pretty quickly today. And some people have heard of me before. My story kind of hit the newspapers by accident when I ran a marathon. And since then, life has been kind of a whirlwind for us. I've been on Good Morning America, ESPN, Runner's World, People Magazine, the Today Show, and that stuff is like super cool. But there's a reason why I do this. There's a reason why we actually worked hard all day today, race out here to do this thing, and then try to get back home because there's a storm rolling in, like a really bad storm for us. So there's a reason why I do this. And the reason is because I know what happened to me, and I know what happened in my life can happen for anyone. There was no magic pill. I didn't have self-control. I didn't have willpower. I had none of these things. I'm just a normal guy. In fact, one time Channel 7 News quoted me as saying, "I'm just a fat guy that ate a bunch of apples." And that's why I'm here. All the other stuff is cool, but that's why I'm here. Anybody can do this. So I'm going to take you super quick to back when I was a teenager. And I really just show this picture because of my cool mullet I had going on. And I won't say anything, but it looks like Heather, who is here, my wife is here somewhere, we kind of had matching mullets. I'm not supposed to talk about that. But I grew up on a farm. We kind of live in a rural area. And I grew up on a farm. I was a hardworking kid, did a lot of heavy lifting and stuff. And as I got older, into my teenage years, maybe 16, 17, I started like folding my ankle over a lot, dislocated my knee, and I thought I was just kind of klutzy, you know? I thought I was like accident prone. It seemed like everything I would do, I would hurt something, and I'd have to like recover from it. And as time went on, I got a job in a factory. Can everybody hear me back there? Okay. I got a job in a factory, and this kind of manual labor was a little bit different. I did a lot of work over my head. And what happened is I reached up to grab a crane pendant, and my shoulder dislocated, which is kind of weird. and it kind of popped back in place. And through the next couple weeks, this got kind of worse and worse and worse, to the point where I would actually sneeze and my shoulder will pop out of the socket. It just was that loose. So I kind of had an idea that something was going on. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, you need surgery. And what they were going to do is this thing called an arthroplasty. Basically, they cut open my back, and they take the tendons and ligaments out, and they kind of stretch them back, and then fold them over, and then stitch them all back together, kind of tighten up the cords in there. And when they got in there, they realized that everything they were stretching was like bubble gum. They just kept stretching and stretching, and they knew something was wrong. So they patched me up the best they could, and when I woke up from the surgery, they said, you have something more wrong than just a dislocating shoulder. You have this genetic disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And basically, it's a genetic screw-up where all the collagen in your body is like really loose. So like when I would pull on a wrench, my hand would separate like an inch off my wrist. It was really weird. Like my knees are real wobbly, and the older I get, the more damage that's been done on the joints. In fact, we interviewed my doctor last year, and it was kind of sobering because he was telling this film crew that every time he saw me, I had an appointment with him every month, and every time he saw me come into the waiting room, not in a wheelchair, he considered that like a really big accomplishment for the month. And this was in my early 20s. I was probably 21, 22, we just got married. But one thing that happened when I left the hospital is they sent me home with a bottle of Lortab. And I had never taken a narcotic in my life. And I can remember when I got home, by the time everything kind of calmed down from the surgery, I took a couple of these Lortabs. And it didn't numb the pain, it didn't take the pain away, but it sure took the edge off. And it made me feel really, really good. I think I had lived in pain so much that it just became the new normal. And like any narcotic, through months of taking them, they kind of became ineffective. And you know, the same feeling I would get from 2 or 3, you know, I had to take 6 and 7. So we kept upping the dosage until there was no more. We couldn't go any higher. And then we started changing medicines around. So I went from the Lortab, and then I went into like Percocets and then Oxys, and I still wasn't getting the relief. It would be the same cycle every time. They'd be effective. Then I was, you know, just hurting and hurting and hurting, so my doctor would prescribe more. And then I started getting really creative in ways I could get them from other people and stuff. And one day I went into the doctor, and I was just so sick of being in pain. And he said, well, we can try this other drug. And I'd never heard of this drug before. And he prescribed me fentanyl. And I knew nothing about this stuff. It's kind of in the news today. I'm sure most people know what fentanyl is. But this was different. This was a transdermal patch. So basically, I had a constant supply of this in my body. The minute I woke up, it was in my body, and the minute I went to bed. But at the same time, we had to keep all the other opioids as like breakthrough drugs, because you had to stay ahead of the pain. So I got really good at this game, but at the same time, the fentanyl did the same exact thing. Super, super effective, highly effective. And then through the months and through the years, we just kept upping the dosage. And finally, I hit the max dose, and I had no place else to go from there. But I can remember, if you ever like lost a night of sleep, you get kind of tired and grumpy, right, the next day. If you lose 2 nights of sleep, you get tired and maybe a little more miserable. But if you go 4 and 5 and 6 nights without sleep, it changes who you are. I was becoming somebody that I did not like. I was absolutely miserable. And all I wanted to do is sleep through the night and not be in pain. So I think this was probably the fastest slope I'd ever been on. I stopped home. I grew up in a home. My family didn't drink. I wasn't around alcohol. I never went out partying with my friends. You know, I was a young dad. I didn't have time for all that stuff anyways. So it wasn't like I was hanging in bars, but I stopped home and I stopped at the liquor store and I got a 1.75 liter of the cheapest vodka I could find. And that night I sat on my bed, I filled up a whole drinking glass, and I just took a handful of pills and I drank that whole glass down and I passed out on my bed. I don't really think, looking back, that I got a good night's sleep, but I definitely passed out fast. And this was another thing that I found, like that opioid kind of effect, was food. fast food especially. I would eat fast food probably 4 times a day, and then we would go out for pizza and wings. We order out probably five nights a week. We'd also go out to restaurants a lot. We didn't cook anything at home. But it's kind of weird, like it's kind of embarrassing to even talk about it, but that, you know, the breakfast sandwiches and stuff, it gave me that same kind of high. Like, I would wait in line, I would get really excited, I get the food, it will feel super, super good for about 3 minutes, and then I'd crump up the wrapper, be kind of embarrassed and throw it on, you know, the floor, or, you know. And even when I would bring fast food home, I'd always like order extra, because I knew how to do this and like eat a couple sandwiches and like hide the evidence and come in, like really weird stuff. It sounds crazy that this is food and not drugs, but it gave me the same exact effect. So at my very worst, I was on the max dose of fentanyl, and this was a routine for me. I'm not talking about like one night. This was a routine for me. I would take about between 15 and 20 tablets, whatever I could get my hands on, and I would drink an entire liter of vodka every night, and that lasted for about 20 minutes before I went to bed. So I was not like saving this up. It was right before I went to bed, I did all this. And this was years I did this. And by rights, I should probably be dead. But anyways, obviously my entire life was spiraling out of control. By the time I was 38 years old, I had reached over 400 pounds. We don't know how much I weighed because the doctor literally couldn't weigh me on a scale. He claims I was well over 400 pounds. I don't know how much over 400 pounds I was. But at the same time, as all this weight is going on these joints that are already destroyed, you can imagine I was on canes and crutches. Just about every joint in my body was braced of some sort. When we moved out of our house, we had like 4 totes, absolutely full, the 18-gallon totes, absolutely full of like immobilizers and braces and canes and crutches. Life sucked. It really sucked. And you know, it's easy for me to tell you guys what it's like to weigh 400 pounds. You know, take the balance of 400 pounds, put it on your back and walk up on the stage. It's not easy. Pick up a pair of keys. You know, go for a walk in the mall, get in and out of your car. It's hard stuff. But I think people get that. Like, I think you can understand that. But what I have trouble explaining to people is I can see it in my eyes in these pictures, that hopeless, you know, that emotional pain. And the emotional pain was far worse than any physical pain that 400 pounds could have brought. We got married young. I was a big, tough guy. We had 2 kids, and here Heather's in the backyard juggling 2 toddlers trying to mow the lawn, while I'm sitting in a recliner with ice on my legs. You know, she's got a kid in one hand carrying groceries up the stairs with the other hand, and I'm useless. I couldn't be a good dad. I couldn't be a good husband. And that's the kind of pain that I can't make you feel, but believe me, it was worse than any physical pain that I had been in. Here's a couple more pictures of what I looked like. Again, my eyes, you can tell in my eyes. So people look at me now and they're like, well, what was that switch? What was that aha moment, that switch that went off and everything changed? And I don't think I really had that switch. I feel like I had more like dominoes tipping over that changed my life. And the first domino that tipped over was actually a domino that I like to call gratitude. We were super, super close to Heather's mom. She's going to talk a little bit in a minute about her, but Heather's mom was like the coolest person in the world. She loved life, and she had like the flu for a little while, and she just wasn't kicking it. And so we convinced her to go see a doctor. And when she went to the doctor, she was diagnosed with leukemia. And by us, we have Roswell. You guys have probably, has anyone heard of Roswell here? Ladies? Okay, so I don't know how far away from home I am, sorry. So Roswell is like our huge cancer institute, super famous. And we got just absolutely dunked into this thing, this cancer thing, that we knew nothing about. And I can remember going in and out of Roswell and seeing all the people there, especially the kids. The kids always, you know, really, really got to me, especially in the leukemia section. You know, all the little kids had bald heads and had masks on, and I always thought about their parents. I'm like, what are the parents thinking? But I remember one night in particular, I went up to visit her mom, and she was really, really weak. She was waiting for another transfusion, and she honestly was struggling just to live to the next morning. And I remember I walked up to her bed, and she opened her eyes super slow. And she said, how's your knee? And it absolutely crushed me. It crushed me for a couple of reasons. One, you can tell what kind of a lady she was. But two, I'd spent my entire life complaining about what I didn't have and what I needed and what I wanted. But I never took any time to be thankful for what I had. And yeah, my knees were screwed up, but I had legs. And I was walking out of Roswell that night, where there were thousands of people behind me that wouldn't come home that night. And some of them would never come home. So I started really, looking inside myself, like this complaining thing. Life is so short, and I was so selfish that that's all I focused on, is what I had wrong with me. While we're dealing with that and seeing who's gonna get up to Roswell and who's gonna stay with mom overnight, we got another phone call. It's my dad, he's my best friend in the entire world. We did everything together. We hunted together, we fished together, we fixed cars together. He told me everything I know. And he was my best friend in the whole world. And he also had like a cold flu thing going on. And they did some chest x-rays to check for pneumonia. And they found out he was loaded with cancer. He had stage 4 renal cancer that had metastasized to his entire body. And the doctors gave him 6 months to live. And my father made it 6 months to the day and passed away. And shortly after that, Heather's mom lost her battle with leukemia that turned to lymphoma and then a brain tumor. And she fought like a warrior. And she lost her battle with cancer. 2 of the most important people in my life got snapped away in an instant. And death is going to happen, and you know sickness, but you never really think it's going to happen like that close to you. And I think another domino that kind of tipped for me is we were trying to get things back to normal, get back to taking kids to basketball practice and trying to get some kind of normalcy back in our life. And I can remember this one day in particular. I went downstairs, and there's a lot of days I couldn't get my socks and shoes on. Again, going back to that emotional pain, it's so humiliating and humbling to have my wife get me dressed in the morning. It was terrible. But this morning in particular, somehow it was different. Like our eyes kind of met, and she put my sock on, and she didn't do it in a condescending way, but she kind of tapped the side of my leg. She goes, "You're all set," kind of like you do a little kid. And I thought about it for a minute. And for the first time, I thought, she is going to have to bury me. And I don't know why. Like, I thought about all the stupid details. Like, she's going to have to plan, the funeral brunch. And all these things that we had just done that I didn't know people do. I didn't really have to go pick out a casket. I didn't know you have all these things that you have to pay for. And for some reason, it just hit me, like, so seriously that morning, that this lady is going to have to do all this stuff for me. And it's coming soon. If I can't get myself dressed at 38 years old, what's life going to look like next year? If I'm alive, how is she going to take care of me? So I thought, I have to at least try. I just watched my dad struggle for his life and lose. I watched my wife's mom struggle for her life. I had to try something. So I went online, and I found this thing called bariatric surgery. Probably most people are familiar with this. Basically, they manipulate your stomach. They either cut a large section out, and it forces you so you can't eat a lot. And I thought this was going to be my thing. So I called the company in Buffalo. I got all the paperwork. I got this big packet in the mail. I went to a couple classes. I had to go for like a group class, and I was all set to go. It was supposed to happen in August. And all I had to do was go to my primary doctor and basically get a rubber stamp. He just had to say I was okay for the surgery. We got in there, and when the nurse took my blood pressure, it was 255 over 115. That was on 2 different blood pressure medicines. I was on a calcium channel blocker and a beta blocker. So they were a little freaked out, but then when they took my pulse is when my doctor really freaked out. Just sitting in the waiting room for almost an hour, it was still at 125, resting heart rate. And he basically said, like, you're gonna have a stroke, like right now, you're gonna have a stroke. So he was gonna call and get an ambulance. So I kind of manipulated him, because I'm really good at manipulating. So I kind of manipulated him to let me hang out there for a while. He laid me down on an examination table and then saw a couple other patients. And we got it down a little bit. It was still over 100. But after I told him my idea, oh man, I had this, I'm a teacher, right? I had a whole presentation for him, all the papers lined up, and just basically sign it. And he said that he has signed for every single person that's come to him for this, but he wouldn't sign for me. He said, number one, with all the narcotics you're on, he was worried about the anesthesia, and number two, he didn't think my heart would handle it. So I thought the guy just signed my death warrant, like right then and there. And I really didn't know what to do. So I got on my knees and I started praying, but this time I had prayed for miracles my whole life. Like I want to just let me wake up with new knees, like Pinocchio, right? And everything will be fine. But this time it was different. I didn't pray for anything crazy. I just prayed for strength to do one more thing, just one more thing a day. And so I started doing what I think a lot of Americans do. We start swapping out. You know, I ate healthy meat, you know, turkey. So I got rid of all my red meat and started eating like turkey and chicken. I started doing like a lower fat thing. And I lost weight. You know, at 400 pounds, pretty much whatever you change, you're gonna lose weight. But I still felt like crap. I was still on almost 20 prescription medicines a day. I had the little, you know, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday thing, the little pill containers. I had to have 2 of them because I couldn't fit them all in one. And that wasn't my narcotics. That was just like my Indocin, my blood pressure medicine. And a lot of the scripts, if I wasn't interested in, I would just drop them. Like, I was supposed to be on metformin. I'm like, yeah, not interested. Dropped it in the can. But anyways, as at least I'm conscious about, you know, there's something happening with what I'm putting into my mouth, to my health. I stumbled on this movie on Netflix called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And honestly, I could care less what the film was about. I just knew that it described me, right? Fat, sick, and nearly dead. I didn't know what was going on. But I hit play. And I tell people to this day, if Joe Cross would have been putting raccoon poop in that juicer, then that's what I'd be eating today. Because I didn't care what was going on, right? I just wanted the results that he had. Basically, if you've never seen it, he goes on a 60-day juice fast. He's from Australia, cool accent. He comes to the US and he spends 60 days in the US on nothing but juice out of his, you know, fruits and vegetables from his juicer. And he loses a bunch of weight, he gets rid of a whole bunch of disease, he gets off almost all of his prescription meds, and it was super inspiring. So I ordered a juicer before the credits even rolled, and it just happened that the first of the year was coming up, which actually will be 6 years, January 1st. And I started this juice fast. And so I decided to do 30 days, right? Because he did 60, so I'll do half of what he did. And as you can imagine, well, first of all, I don't know if anyone's ever juiced before. So I went to the gas station and got some produce and put this stuff through the juicer. And I got about 3 spoonfuls of juice, right? And I'm like, this is not gonna work. So, which is kind of cool because now, like, that actually taught us how to go shopping. We had never shopped before. If we shopped, it was like, you know, go get Tide, toilet paper, and Totino's pizza rolls. That was our shopping. But now, like, I'm like yelling across the store, like waving kale at my wife, look at it, it's 99 cents, you know? And I was getting excited about finding produce, which is really weird. But at any rate, by, you know, the 3rd day I was starving. The 4th day I just wanted to go to sleep because I was so hungry. But I woke up on the 4th day and I felt better. Like, I felt better. And I was actually starting to wake up before my alarm went off. And then all of a sudden, like day 5, the hunger started going away. But, I mean, I've told this story hundreds of times, literally. And I still get goosebumps every time I get to this part of my story. Something like magical happened on day 5, day 6. I woke up in the same exact position that I went to bed. And that to me was like huge. That was a miracle. It literally was a miracle. I hadn't done that in decades. I was a young guy, and I hadn't done that in 20 years. And it was crazy. And I was getting a really good night's sleep. See, I could pass out from the narcotics and the alcohol, but I never really got a good night's sleep. It was the first time that I actually got a good night's sleep. And I started forgetting to take my medicine. And Heather had to stop, you know, she used to, I mean, it was quite a chore to get me out of bed in the morning because I just wanted to sleep, but I was waking up before my alarm. So the juice fast went on, but at the same time I realized that I could not just sustain this whole juice thing the rest of my life. But because I watched that, a whole bunch of other stuff came up in my queue for Netflix. And one of the films that came up that I watched next was this film called Forks Over Knives. If you haven't seen this film before, like, go home and watch it tonight. This movie didn't just save my life, it gave me a completely new one. Basically what it was is everything that I was putting in the juicer, you just eat, along with whole grains and stuff like that. And by the time I was done with 30 days, an apple looked like I couldn't wait to eat an apple. But it seemed so simple, right? But the more stuff that I would find, you know, the more trails I would go on and start doing more research. But at the same time, I could see this research, I could see the science, and I got it. One of the things that really, you know, hit me hard with forks over knives is watching two parents die of cancer, and then you got Dr. Campbell turning on and off cancer, like just by using normal amounts of protein, which is really crazy. But even with all that research, there's still this thing that I grew up on a farm. I grew up a hunter. I have animals that I've killed, like tattooed on me, right? Like this is not me. Like all my friends, I should show you a picture of like me and my Carhartts and my demolition derby on hangover races and stuff. Like this is not me at all. Like I wanted nothing to do with this end of it, but I like the health part. But some things started making sense to me. We have a bird feeder and well, a couple bird feeders like right out our kitchen window. And it seemed like for a while, every day Heather would go out and fill that bird feeder. Like, I don't know where she got the money for pallets of bird feed, but she'd fill this and it'd be empty like every day. And I noticed something as I'm standing there leaning on a sink. These birds are all eating. I teach like physics/engineering. And for a bird to fly, like if it gains a little weight, what happens to the bird? He's not gonna fly, right? And I noticed no one had to portion out their bird feed. They had an unlimited supply of bird feed, right? They could eat all day, they could eat as much as they want. And not one bird is in my backyard on a little scooter. Not one. I never saw a bird like flying sideways trying to take off because it ate too much. Deer, I grew up in tree stands, right? I've spent days in the woods, right? Right in our backyard, we have 650 acres of corn. I have never seen a deer with a muffin top, not one. And they have all the food that they want to eat, right? Fish, same thing. I grew up fishing Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. I would pull up a fish. I never once caught smallmouth bass with cankles. Not once. Again, they have all the food that they want. And it started hitting me that maybe it's not how much I'm eating, right? Maybe I'm just not eating the food that's designed for me, just like the animals. But then there's still this thing that everyone tells you, well, why do you need meat? One word. Protein, right? We need protein, right? But then you start seeing stuff like this. Like the strongest mammals on the planet, like are herbivores, right? I mean, a gorilla can lift 10 pounds their weight naturally. Where do they get the protein? So this next slide I'm going to show you is a little weird, so just bear with me. But the next thing is the dairy, because I grew up on a dairy farm, right? And we brought all our milk home right out of the tank. So why do we need dairy? Calcium, right? For strong bones. This is a little side note, but can anybody guess what the highest consuming nation of dairy products is? The U.S., right? Can anybody guess what the highest incidence of osteoporosis is? Does that not like make you think that something's going on? But anyways, I do a lot of talks for high schools, and I tell the kids, if I walk in my backyard and pop a carrot out of my garden, smack it on my jeans, kind of dust it off and eat it, does anyone find that weird? The kids might, but that's kind of a normal thing, right? I'm going back there with no technology, no tools, just what I have biologically been given, okay? Now let's change it up, and I'm gonna go in my backyard and get milk, okay? I go back there with no technology, only the biological tools I've been getting. What does that look like? Someone's gonna call the cops, right? This is weird. But it's what we've been taught. Like society has taught us that this is normal. And maybe this isn't normal, but you get it, right? But anyways, the more I learned, like the science end of it, the more kind of common sense it started making that, you know, I was weaned, I don't know, I don't remember, but I'm sure, you know, I was weaned from my mom at some point, but then why do we keep drinking milk? And not only that, why do we drink another species milk, which is really weird too. But I'll get rid of the weird stuff now. But at any rate, you know, all the food choices I was making was really making me feel better. and it was starting to make me change. And people love this story. This picture, I remember Heather came in the house one day, and she comes storming in the door. She goes, "You want to go for a walk?" And I'm like, "What'd you do to the car?" Like, why would you walk? Why would you walk when there's a perfectly good vehicle in the driveway, right? But I decided to go for a walk with her, and I'm glad I did, because this walk meant a lot to me on my journey. And so the idea was to go out. We were going to walk 3/4 of a mile, walk back, mile and a half walk. And I didn't make it to the turnaround. I actually made it a little short of the turnaround. I sat down, and Heather and the kids had to come pick me up. But something inside me wanted to go back and finish that walk. So as soon as I healed up, I went back and I tried to walk a little bit further. And I started doing that every weekend, just walking a little bit more. I was still in braces, I still had canes and stuff. But I love the outdoors, right? And they told me with the EDS, keep your body as quiet as you can, move as little as possible, and stay off uneven ground. So I bought a pair of hiking boots and I started hiking, because that made sense to me, right? But the more places I would find in our area, I lived here all my life, I'd start finding these cool places, and I'd start bringing my family. And I started becoming a better dad and a better husband again, because I was actually enjoying activities with them. Instead of watching a basketball like just roll by me and not being able to pick it up, I could go take my daughter on a walk. I could take my son for a hike at Letchworth. And then one day, my buddy came home from the Adirondacks, the high peaks, and he had climbed a high peak. And I think this is another one of the dominoes that tipped for me. And I told him, I said, I want to climb a high peak in a year. And he's like, okay. I was still really big, and I was still in braces. So I went to my doctor and I said, listen, I'm going to be climbing a mountain. And he just looked at me. He said, you got to let my knees bend. Like, you can't have my, because I was like walking with my hips. I'm like, I got to be able to bend my knees. And he's like, okay, we can try something. So they sent me to this place where they casted my legs, and they sent them out, and they made braces in California. And I started walking upstairs. Not many, 5, 6 stairs. Well, 5, 6 stairs turned into 10, then turned into 15, then turned into 20. And before I knew it, I was actually timing like hundreds of stairs at a time. And so we went out, we tried the first time, and I didn't make it. I gave myself a year. I gave myself a little leeway, so I went a month early. I got about halfway. I thought I was going to die. So we came back home. We regrouped. Some nice weather came in. And in 2012, I summited Big Slide Mountain. I was still wearing one brace, but it was a super, super special time in my life, because maybe the doctors were wrong. Maybe they were missing something. And every time I go somewhere and see these cool places, I'll bring Heather and the kids back. And you guys got to see this. And to this day, Lake Placid is super, super special to us. The stronger I got, the more fit I got. I could do multiple peaks in a day. And then they signed us up for this Tough Mudder thing that Heather wanted nothing to do with, because she doesn't get muddy. But I kind of coaxed her into it, because I got her sister and her brother-in-law to do it with us, so she kind of had to by default. But anyways, in 2013, we completed the Tough Mudder as a family in school. And I felt so good doing it. It felt so cool. We kind of walked most of it. I came home and I said, hey, we should run a 5K. And she goes, that'd be crazy. We're not runners. I'm like, I know, but we should try. So we set up water bottles like every 25 feet around our neighborhood. And this was another domino. It's, to this day, it's the most special finish line I've ever crossed. We actually got so emotional at this finish line that people thought something really bad happened. I was a mess. I was crying like a baby. But it felt so good that I accomplished something. And then on the way home, I kind of gave her a nudge, and I'm like, how about a 10K? And she goes, we almost died doing that. So a couple months later, we were actually able to do a 10K for hospice in Roswell, which was super, super special. And so, of course, on the way home, I gave her another nudge, and I'm like, how about a half marathon? And she goes, I'm out of here. You're done. I'm out. But what's cool is when I went home, on my nightstand, I had this security blanket that I had of my handicap parking pass. I took it everywhere with me. It was like, I don't know, it just made me feel so secure. But I hadn't needed it in so long. And I noticed that it was about to expire in September, which happened to be the same month the Mighty Niagara was being run. And I thought, how cool would it be to park legally in a handicapped parking spot for my first half marathon. I thought that would be super cool. But at the same time, I knew it would be the hardest thing I'd ever done. So what I did is I took a picture of her mom and my dad and my family, and I had a friend that was struggling with throat cancer, and I taped it onto my handicap pass. I popped a hole in it, and I carried that thing around my waist for 13.1 miles. And that was another domino that tipped for me. I wasn't supposed to be walking, much less running half marathons. And then I started seeing these people on these bicycles. And I hadn't ridden a bicycle since I was a kid, right? But I signed up for a 100-mile bike ride. Of course, I did it before I bought a bike, but I bought the bike. And 8 weeks later, I actually crossed the finish line on my first 100-mile bike ride, which was super special. But what I didn't know, I can see it looking back, but what I didn't know was happening with me is the food that I was eating, the whole plant food that I was eating, it was literally taking the inflammation out of my body, just flushing it right out. So my knees would get so big I couldn't get them into jeans, right? And all that inflammation was gone. It doesn't mean that I don't have EDS anymore. I mean, my joints still move everywhere, but I don't get that inflammation. And the other thing that was my enemy was atrophy. But the more I'd move, the more range of motion I would get. And this whole thing was kind of unsnowballing like it snowballed. The other thing that was happening is I was getting stronger. I didn't know what I was doing working out. I didn't know a 500-pound deadlift was a thing, right? I didn't know it was heavy. And I also didn't know you could do that with like weak knees. But what it was training me to do when I get stronger, my muscles were actually taking over while my joints are failing, right? And then along with the food and the vitamins and the nutrients and all that stuff, it was just a recipe for me to get healthy. So I ran my first marathon, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Last summer I had a really cool opportunity to do my first half Ironman in Ohio, which was super fun. And then this past summer, I was able to do Lake Placid half Ironman, which is super cool. And I'm registered to do the full, but I'm a little freaked out about that. But anyways, I have medals and awards and all this stuff, and this stuff is super, super cool. I'm in a few films, and that stuff is super cool. That's the stuff that everyone likes to hear that makes them feel good. But you know what? None of that stuff honestly means anything to me as much as this kind of stuff. You remember that first walk I told you about that my kids went on with me? We met again on the trail last year. Actually, it'll be almost a year ago, February. But this time, we all met for a different reason. See, each one of my kids and Heather took a different way to crew me and pace me for my first 50-mile foot race. That's the stuff that means something to me. Sorry. The other thing, this picture, this was another one of those days. We were on vacation. I couldn't get my socks and shoes on, and I had to bug her to do it. And I got to return the favor a couple years later because she was struggling with her backpack. She couldn't get her arm in her backpack, right? And I got to help her. Only this time, we were 6,500 feet in the air because we just summited Mount Washington. That's the stuff that means something to me. Remember I told you she wouldn't do a half marathon? I got to pace her for her first half marathon. And that was the last time we kind of ran together because she's so fast I can't catch her anymore, right? And she's went on to run marathons, and we even have done a few ultra marathons together. She's super cool. And you know, stuff like this, we get to go all over the place. We were in Colorado, and this picture, it reminded me, like everyone was warning us. I think even Sherry warned us. It's very hard to breathe up there, right? It's hard to breathe because the race started at 10,000 feet and ended at 13,000. And I had that in the back of my mind, but it really didn't affect me. And I thought when we crossed the finish line, Heather had spent years like staying up at night because I had sleep apnea so bad she was shaking. I'd stop breathing. She was always worried about my breathing. And not once did she worry how my breathing was in a trail race in Colorado. And that's the stuff that means a lot to me. So I think this is a super good time. She is super nervous. So she's gonna share just a little bit of her story with you guys. And do I tell she's nervous? She's awesome. I could have helped her out, sorry. All right.
Hi, I wanted to share with you some of my story. I was a healthy weight as a child and as a teen, and then I met Tim, and you know, we started going out, and our form of entertainment was eating and going to restaurants and movies, and we got married early. Same thing, go out to eat, go to the movies, you know, food was our entertainment. Well, I also got pregnant right away with our son, and I gained over 70 pounds. I tried to lose some weight, and then gained it back, and then I got pregnant with my daughter, so here comes more weight. So as we were going along here, I would exercise, I would do the DVDs or videos, whatever they were back then, and you know, try to lose some weight, go to Weight Watchers, and I just did the same thing that we all do. And as time went on, Tim then decided that he was gonna start eating plant-based, and while I supported him, I just didn't feel like I needed to do that right then. I thought, oh, I'm all right, I'm not, you know, I'm moving, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and you know, me and the kids, we eat pizza while he'd be juicing, and we'd be eating our foods. And then we started tasting some of Tim's food, and it was good. And so I'd start having veggie pizzas, or we'd start, you know, not having meat on the pizza, just cheese. And then we started tasting more of his foods and seeing how he was feeling and getting better. And because he was cooking, we started eating a lot of his food, and I've never liked to cook anyway, so it was a plus. He was the one cooking, so might as well just let him cook. And so we got, you know, we had gotten rid of the meat and everything, and one day me and Tim were walking through the mall, and I had a cramp in my side, and kind of didn't think anything of it at the time, but probably, I don't know if it was like a month later, I had an appointment with my gynecologist, and he said that I had a fibroid the size of a softball, and he had wanted me to, you know, have surgery. And I said, well, is it cancerous? You know, I don't want surgery. I don't want to have anything to do with that. And he said, no, they're not usually, but you know, we'll keep an eye on it. And I said, fine, because I was not going to a hospital. So a few months later, I had a primary visit, and my primary doctor asked me about it, and I said, yeah, we're watching it, you know, it's really okay. And so he insisted that I go in and have a CAT scan of it, and by this time it was like the size of a grapefruit, and he wanted to make sure it wasn't pushing on any of my other organs, which it was, and strongly suggested that I go in for surgery. We talked about it between the two doctors, and I really kind of avoided it, but I said, well, okay, if you can get me in for surgery after my daughter's high school graduation and before her graduation party, then we'll do it. Well, of course, they figured that out. I ended up going in, and I ended up having to have a total hysterectomy. And that night brought back so many memories of my mom being in the hospital. And the things that stuck out to me the most was I had to tell her she had leukemia. Then I had to tell her she had lymphoma. Then I had to tell her she had a brain tumor. And she was doing radiation, and her doctors were like, well, why is she still doing this? And I said, well, because this is what you told her to do, and she wants to live, so she's going to do what she can to live. And you know, they brought me in the room, and we talked with her team, and they, you know, had suggested she go home to hospice because they didn't want to see her struggling, and they didn't think she'd make it to Christmas that year. So here I go in and have to tell her she has to go home into hospice, and she said to me, what do you want me to do, just go home and die? And that just was so heart-wrenching to have to tell her she had to go home. And when Tim came in the next morning, I said to him, I will eat whole food, plant-based. I want to be healthy. I do not want to ever come back to a hospital again if I can do it on my own to keep myself out of there. And I never wanted to have to come back into a hospital again. And so, sorry. I also, because I wanted to be healthy, I did not focus on the scale. It wasn't about my weight loss. It was just about being healthy, eating healthy. I didn't even really think about the weight loss till, you know, you start losing weight and your clothes start changing and you get, you know, smaller sizes. But I've always just focused on that weight and focused on being healthy and not the weight. And so we'd start, you know, started to do more activity, walking, feeling better. We started hiking. We'd even, I found that I could be outside in the winter, and it was really okay that you can go outside, you can do things, and I found I even have a little bit of a competitive side. I found that my activity is running, and I really enjoy it. I like just putting earbuds in and going out and not having to worry about anything. But I just wanted to say that your health is so important. The weight loss is a side effect, and the food that we put into our body can either fuel us or harm us, and I choose good, and I hope that you guys do too. Thank you.
She did awesome. That was great. So I just want to finish up. So a couple other things that are really like make me feel good about this rather than just races and stuff is I get to share my story all over the place. And not only share my story, I get to work with a lot of high school kids because that's what I do. I'm a high school teacher. And every single student that comes through our building, I do 2 talks for them. I do one on whole food nutrition, and then I also do one on addiction recovery. I think it's so, so important. The other thing, the kind of a side effect of all this stuff is my cholesterol was always over 300 on Lipitor, right? I have to update this because the last results I got, my cholesterol is 112 total. No medicine at all. And I asked my doctor, I'm like, what medicine can do that? He's like, you know, I can't. And this, like, it's so weird because people get all excited and they come to me and tell me this stuff, and I almost feel bad at this point that I'm like, well, what do you think is going to happen? You know, it's kind of, it took the excitement out of it, but the results for this stuff, you know, they're not just typical. Like, they're expected. Like, I expect this to happen. The other thing too, my triglycerides went from 259 in 09 to 74. This is huge if you like money, because we all have to pay for this stuff. And I tell my students even, like, somebody has to pay for this stuff. In 2009, Independent Health paid almost 20 grand just for pharmaceuticals. This is not like MRIs and all that kind of, this is just for my medicine. And the past 2 years, 15 and 16, they've shelled out $122, and that's for vitamin B that I can get over the counter. Not only is the alcohol, the fentanyl, and all that garbage food gone, but it's been replaced by me teaching other people how to do this stuff, which is super cool. So I just want to talk really, really fast about, that's my story, and it's super cool. But why does this matter to you guys? Well, right now, obesity is growing at an alarming rate, and because of it, a ton of chronic diseases are stemming from it. So right now, only 30% of the population is actually at a healthy weight. And I kind of don't believe that statistic, because in that 30%, you know, you have addicts, you have terminally sick people. Like, a lot of people are at a healthy weight, not for healthy reasons, right? But the bottom line is this costing us over $300 billion a year for the obesity. 70% of the US is on some kind of prescription, and half of them are on 2 or more. And like, those numbers sound crazy, but think about it. Think about the people that you know. Almost everyone seems like they're on something, right? Heart disease, stroke, certain kinds of cancer, lung disease. This chronic disease is all stemming from our plate. And we're getting heavier and sicker. But here's the weird thing. We're putting more and more money at this stuff, and we have more and more technology. The stuff that they do is crazy. Like, the surgeries are doing 2 little holes in your knee, they can do a full surgery instead of taking you all apart. Like, the technology is advancing at a rapid rate. We're spending more and more money, but we're getting heavier and sicker. So I don't know. I ask myself why. Like, I'm not a research scientist. I don't know much about biology, but I just think, from my perspective, that maybe it's time to stop looking for the cause of all this stuff is start looking, or the cure for all this stuff, and look for the cause. And in my opinion, that cause is right on our plates. And it can be fixed so easy. So a couple stereotypes super quick. People think that vegans or plant-based people are these weak, protein deficient people. And it's not true. And the other thing, they think that we like eat twigs, and I kid around saying I lick the bottom of my lawnmower. And we chew on leaves, right? But that's so inaccurate, because actually some of the most elite athletes in the world are plant-based or vegan. And if you keep an eye out, like you're seeing all these NFL teams and NBA teams, a lot of big clusters of them are switching to whole food plant-based diet, mostly for the recovery aspect of it. In fact, right now, Germany's strongest man, Patrick Bohemian, he's been plant-based for a long time, over 10 years. Our food is delicious, it's colorful, it's alive. I don't have the time to show you like my 5-minute slides on all the delicious food. It takes minutes to make. And the other thing, I did this for my health, right? And I find myself like doing these talks at like, vegan sanctuaries and stuff. And again, with my past, having dead animals on myself is a really weird feeling of being in front of, a vegan audience. But here's what happened to me. I was totally selfish about this. I did it for my health. But the farther I get into this, I start realizing stuff. Things like the environment. We are killing the planet with these factory farms. And farming isn't farming how I think of farming. We had 70 cows on our farm, right? That's not what it looks like. We are consuming 9 billion chickens a year just in the US. To give you an idea, I did all the measurements for a talk I did. If you stack dimes, but like stand them up, that stack of dimes, 1 dime represents each chicken. It goes from here to the center of India. That's how many chickens we're consuming each year. We can't sustain this. We can't sustain it. As far as the economy, I showed you just a little clip of just insurance and the animals and the environment. But anyways, this is actually a slide I pulled out of my high school presentations only because this is a challenge group. I'm super excited for you guys because for me, that 30-day, if you want to call it a challenge, when I juiced, totally flipped my life upside down and a whole bunch of other lives with me. So I just want to talk super, super quick about goals. Goals are super important. I think as a teacher, I tell my kids all the time, and I told them for years, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want to do. You put your mind to something, you'll get it done. But then it seems like all of my colleagues, I can say this because I'm not at my school, they all have the same thing, right? You get to Friday. Hopefully it's a 4-day week. You get a long weekend. Then you just got to make it to the next break. We just got off Thanksgiving break. We just got to make it to Christmas. I just got a few more grades to put in, right? And then we're looking for summer. Oh man, it's January. It's close to June, right? And I find the longer I go in my career, it's like September 5th, and I'm kind of on June, right? But we wish our lives away, right? And so you want to get to summer, and then how many summer? Oh man, I got 4 years left, and I can walk out, and then what? So there's a life. I know everyone has responsibilities. It's so easy. You get so busy, especially. I have a heart for teachers because I know how hard we work, right, at our part-time job, right? But it's easy to get caught up in taking care of everyone but yourself. But set some goals in this challenge, and if you can stick with them, like they become habits, and then your habits become your lifestyle. And if your students can change or your kids can change, you tell these kids they can do anything they want to do, you guys can do that too. And it's super good when you accomplish something to get your self-worth from yourself instead of social media. I kid around because Heather and I have these like beautiful pictures, like when we go for a run, we're like both in exactly the same stride, the sun's just hitting just the right way. But what you don't see is the 200 pictures with like snot out my nose, like I'm yelling at her, like no one sees that stuff. So we tend to look at social media and then judge like, oh, my life sucks. But it's not true, and I think the more goals you set and the more you accomplish, the more you don't need that other crap, and you feel good about yourself for what you accomplished. So stick with these goals. And the last thing, I'm going to leave you with a question, that if a whole food, plant-based diet can take a 400-pound crippled addict and turn him into a 200-pound fit, active person that loves to get out of bed in the morning, what can it do for you? Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Tim. And I forgot when I was going to introduce them. I should have told you it was a story of love. A story of love of self, but also of their marriage and their relationship. A wonderful thing. This is his page. You can go to fatmanrants.com. You can talk with him. You can find out more. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy.
He has an e-cookbook.
And he has an e-cookbook, which is $2.99.
No, you can get it for free. If you send an email, to fatmanrants@gmail.com with the word book in the subject line, and it'll automatically kick you cookbook. Super simple. Like I like 3-ingredient recipes, fast. I don't have time to cook because I'm enjoying life. So do that.
Wait, fatmanrants@gmail.com. I need to listen.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, it's just fatmanrants@gmail.com. It's just like fatmanrants@gmail.com. And just put the word book in the subject line. And okay, so honestly, I'm gonna confess to you. I have it set up so like I'm on vacation, so it's gonna automatically kick it back no matter what you put in the title, but it helps me to sort out my subscribers. So just send an email, you'll automatically get a link to the book back.
We're at about our time, and I had other slides, but I'll go through some things quickly. The rest was all about the challenge itself. And if you signed up for the challenge and I have your email, and if you signed up in your district, I'll get your email. If you signed up here, I'll get it. If you signed up on anything, I'll have your email. You'll start, once I have a master list of everybody who signed up, you'll start getting newsletters from me, which will have a lot of information in it. So I don't have to go through everything. The one book that we are using for the challenge, which is a great book, I can't recommend it highly enough. Some of you are getting it through your business. Others you may have to purchase, is the Engine to 7-Day Rescue Diet Book by Rip Esselstyn. It is great. If you need to ask anything before we start sending you emails, you can just write to Sherry and I at eatplantslove@gmail.com, and you can ask us your questions. I know people have these little green tickets that somebody handed out, and we're going to pull for these. We had actually written to a lot of these plant-based people who have these cookbooks to donate books, and they more than willing were. We also have some free blankets. If I could have some of my coaches help Rick distribute these, we're going to sort of do it like at a, yes, we're going to throw them. So if you don't get a blanket, you might get the book. We're going to make sure you get in the back too. Oh, what do we have?
Well, let's see. You want to pick one? Sure. Let's take it up. All right. Okay.
And this is for which one?
This is for Forks Over Knife Flavor.
Forks Over Knife Flavor, brand new book out this year. The number is 416558. 416558. Yay! Thank you, coaches.
You want to do one?
And these are some of our favorite books. That's why we asked these people to send them. This number is 416-412 for the Vegan 8. What's great about the Vegan 8 recipe? Way in the back, gray sweatshirt. What's great about the Vegan 8 is all our recipes have 8 ingredients. That's why it's the Vegan 8. And one little caveat here. I came to it for health. Tim came to it for health. There's a difference between vegan and plant-based. Vegans are doing it for the animals. Typically, a lot of them don't care about health. Oreos are vegan. Potato chips can be vegan. They're not healthy. So it's different than a whole food plant-based diet. All right. Doesn't necessarily mean you're vegan if you do this either. Which book is this?
This is for the Plant-Based Solution.
Plant-Based Solution. Dr. Kaufman, a cardiologist out of Detroit, has a great podcast. The number is 416541. Woohoo!
Hey, come to that one.
This is the last.
And then the good
Oh, great.
And we have, for the Idiot's Guide to Plant-Based Nutrition, Juliana Hever and Ray Cronice, amazing people. Ray Cronice was the guy who helped Penn Jillette, the magician, lose 100 pounds in 86 days. Juliana Hever is the plant-based dietitian, the most beautiful person inside and out I've ever met, next to my wife. The number is 416-595. Right there. And we have a box of food that we are having.
Collective, local organic vegetables. Start you on your plant-based journey.
So we threw all the numbers into there, all the extra ones. So this is like an extra chance to win. And for the veggies, 416-486.
Oh, yay!
Again, I'd like to thank all the vendors. Hopefully you got to meet Dr. Graff, talk with Wegmans people, talk with our lovely lady from PCRM in Buffalo, and enjoy Dara's food. Have a great night. Thank you so much for taking time out.
This is like the witness step. That's like the jackpot.
Anybody needs one of our cards, reach us.
Do you want to wait here for just a minute?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very nice job.
Thank you. Thank you for all the help. Thank you. Thank you.